Wait, stop, what? What are you doing? Welcome to another episode of 10 Minute Land Surveyor. I'm Dave Woolley. People often wonder what California land surveyors make. I received a letter the first week of February from Local 3 operating engineers. Local 3 is generally the area north of Bakersfield, east to Reno, and includes Hawaii. The new rate sheet, effective March 1st, 2025, took effect yesterday. On the screen, you see the breakdown. You see that a licensed land surveyor makes $63.09. That's if they have more than 2,000 hours. The land surveyor that makes less than that makes $62.50 per hour. Now that's just what they get on the check. The actual cost to the employer is shown here. It's $97.62 an hour. So that means that every hour that person works costs the employer $97.62 and they get $63 an hour. Then you'll see that you have a certified party chief with 5 of the 6 certifications, or an LSIT, and they make $63.09. Wait, what? They make the same as a licensed land surveyor? An LSIT and a licensed land surveyor make the same wage? That doesn't seem right, but here it is. Okay, then we look down and we see that the chain person, fully burdened, is $87.11. That's encouraging because there is some separation there between the chainman and the party chief, and it looks to be about $10 an hour. Now that's an improvement, because it used to be that the chainman and the party chief only made a couple dollars different an hour, and so there was never any incentive to become a party chief. But it looks like they've changed that now, and I certainly encourage it. Let's look back at the screen and see what else we have here. Okay, here's the party chief, and the party chief makes 62. Wait, what? A party chief with no certifications, no LSIT, and no license makes $62.05, but a licensed land surveyor makes $63.09. There's a dollar difference between a person that never got any certifications, hasn't taken an LSIT, and isn't a licensed land surveyor, and that person makes $1 less a year. I apologize, $1 less an hour. Therein lies the problem. What's the incentive to get your LSIT? What's the incentive to ever become a licensed surveyor? Why not just donk up, be a chief for $1 an hour? I wouldn't need to mess around with any exams. So that difference between $97 an hour and $63 an hour, how does that break down? Well, if you look at the screen, you'll see that they have $10.69 an hour that goes to the health and welfare. You have a pension, health and welfare for $269, you have a pension for $1201, and you have an annuity fund for $250. And then there's some various odds and ends on there that bring the total benefit package, fringe benefit they call it, up to $32.53. That's more than most surveyors make outside of California, I'm sure. One of the things I want to draw your attention to is the pension benefit shown here. $1201 plus $250 for $1451 per hour work, roughly $28,000 a year. We're going to do some math on that in a minute. But this is how Local 3 breaks down. Let's take a second and look at Local 12 before I go forward. This is the prevailing wage south of Bakersfield, which is the area of Local 12. Local 12 is south of Bakersfield, extends over to Las Vegas. These are the prevailing wages for that. Just to show you what they make $61.51 per hour. They have a health and welfare that costs the employer $12.85. And then they have a pension that's $14.65. And if you go across the screens, there's some nickels and dimes that go in there. But just know that the hourly cost to the employer for a Local 12 party chief is going to be $95.38. And for a chainman, it's going to be $88.93. One of the things that I want to bring to your attention is the Local 3 pension was $14.51, and the Local 12 pension is $14.65 an hour. So this means that for every hour that employee works, the employer is obligated to pay $14.65 for every hour worked. Before I get back into what the land surveyors make in Local 3, it's similar as I showed you earlier in Local 12. I want to talk about what you're actually getting. Now, public agencies that contract with surveyors in California, they use a qualification-based selection, or a Mini Brooks Act, and they hire the most qualified firms. Stop and think about this. Who's more qualified? An LS or an LSIT? An LSIT or some kind of wonky certification? Well, obviously the LS is the most qualified, and that's why Caltrans requires licensed party chiefs. To be a party chief for Caltrans, you have to be licensed. Now, every public agency that I'm aware of requires an LSIT to be, as a minimum qualification to be a party chief. Let's go ahead and look back at the screen again. So when I look here, I see that a party chief is making $96.58. That's the cost that the employer is paying, but it's also passed on to the public agency. Then next, I see here the LSIT is making $97.62, as is this certified thing. Anyway, $97.62. Now, if you get an LS with less than 2,000 hours, wait a minute, you actually get a bargain there. So if you get a new LS, you're getting a more qualified person for less money. I think these public agencies should be looking for that. And then if we look up here, a licensed party chief is $97.62. Well, heck, for less than $1, if I was a public agency, I would say, give me one of those. So if I'm paying the same rate, because these costs are passed on to the agency, then it's just a matter of asking for it. They have it on the schedule, and for an extra buck or less, give me an LS, or minimally, give me an LSIT, because how the heck do I justify to my people as a public agency, how do I justify to them that we're paying top dollar for somebody that can't even apply for their job, no LSIT? And they clearly have a category for it. So if you're hiring people from a qualification-based selection, you would require an LSIT. Now, the public agencies locally here, they're pretty wise to this now. Almost everybody's requiring an LSIT minimum qualification to be on a survey crew. Matter of fact, some of the agencies locally now, they're requiring both members of a survey crew to be an LSIT. And it makes sense. Think about it. You go through the apprenticeship program, you take 2-3 years of school, you have some experience, you should be able to go sit for this LSIT and pass it. And if you haven't taken the LSIT and you haven't passed it, I would argue that you just don't have that much ambition. Or if you don't have the ambition, I would argue that the employers have been running a sham, and because they're not demanding it. I personally got my LSIT when I was 20, 21 years old. And frankly, I couldn't have been that smart. I couldn't have known that much. And I went and sat for it and got it. So if you have somebody sitting around 5, 10, 15 years, no LSIT, then they probably shouldn't be on a public works job. And public agencies, if you're hiring private surveyors, you should demand that these folks have the minimum qualifications required to work for you directly. Think about this. You're shoveling hundreds of thousands, and in some instances millions of dollars of survey work out. These folks are learning your specifications, learning your standards. Now you have a vacancy open, and who are you going to hire? Not the people you've been giving millions of dollars to. Why? Because the employer is not demanding you get LSITs. 3-4 years ago, I had 7 LSs and 8 techs, and most of the techs had LSITs. Now today, all but 2 of my employees have LSITs, and they each have sat for that test, and they're going to. Now, am I splitting atoms over here? No. All I'm doing is saying, if you want to work here, you want to be a land surveyor, you got to get your LSIT. Any employer that doesn't say that, I would argue, is not the most qualified firm. Step it up, public agencies. Check the qualifications of the people you are hiring. Okay, I'm moving on to the pension fund now. Take a look at the screen, and what the contribution is here for the pension is $12.01. Then there's another pensioned health and welfare. I don't think that applies, but you have an annuity fund. So you have $14.51 going into the some kind of a pension fund. And as I was showing you earlier, Local 12 pays about the same. I want to run through what your pension is if you're signatory, or how it compares to a 401k. So the union pension is a defined benefit plan, and you earn credits for years of service, and then those credits are worth X amount of money per credit. Local 12, from 2007 until last year, you get $58 a credit, which was recently increased to $62 a credit. Let's take a look at what that looks like according to their pension plan. So how does this defined benefit work? Well, it works like this. If you look at the OE trust fund paperwork, and Local 3 and Local 12 are real similar, but I'm going to just go ahead and jump up to page 38 of this particular plan. They have some really good examples inside this pension plan. So if you see here that you've contributed for 30 years, 1,500 hours a year, your monthly pension would be as follows. Your monthly pension would be $2,700. Now there's some caveats when I talk about a pension being $2,700. It actually is contingent upon you retiring at the age of 65. Operators, land surveyors, particularly if you're in the field the whole time, I would argue that most people don't make it to 65. So just to make it easy, we see that number of 2,763. Keep that in mind. Let's just round it up so that we're thinking $3,000 a month. And for math purposes, it'll work for now. In the event that you cannot work until you're 65 and you're not going to be eligible for the $3,000 a month, take a look at how the math works. On the screen, you'll see that if you were 65, you're making $3,000 a month. Oh, that's handy. They're actually using the same number I was using. If you retire between 62 and 65, you will lose 27% of that benefit. So you lose $270 for every 1,000. So you're going to lose about $900 a month on that. Then you come down, if you retire between 58 and 62, then you're going to lose another 24%, and your total reduction is going to be 59%. So you're going to lose you're going to lose 59% of that $3,000 monthly pension. So that's 590 times 3. It's about $1,800. So your pension's going to be, well, they actually do the math right here. Your pension's going to be $1,770. So you contribute for 30 years, you start in there at 25, and you get to be 55, you hang on till you get to be about 62, and you're going to lose 24% of your pension. If you can't make it to 62, then you're going to find out that you're going to lose 59% of your pension. And so your total pension is going to be $1,230 if you look here. So the point is, to recap, is you're contributing. About your max pension after 30 years is going to be about $3,000. You take your $3,000, you don't make it to 65, you make it to 62, you're going to exit with $1,770 a month. Now, if you don't make it to 62, then you're going to exit with $1,230 or some portion of that. So you're going to end up with about $1,200 a month with a bum knee. So it's important that you understand that. There's a couple other things you have to understand about this pension. Let's go back to the max pension. You're getting $3,000 a month on the high side, and you retire at 65. So what does that look like? Well, if you look, the average life expectancy of a man is 74.8. So we'll just say 75. So you're going to collect $3,000 a month, $36,000 a year for 10 years, $360,000. After you die, your wife gets half of that. So she's going to get $1,500, and she's going to collect for another 5 years after you're dead. So then if you're getting $360,000, half that again is $180,000. So your total pull is going to be around $450,000 of the money that you contributed. That's roughly it. Now, there's a lot of complex complications in the pension, but if you play with the max number, you know you only go down from there. Now, there's another thing to keep in mind. that when you get $58 a credit hour, then you never get a raise. So when you retired in 2007 at $58 a credit hour, here in 2025, with all the inflation that's happened over the last 20 years, you have never had a raise and you'll never get a raise. So you need to keep that in mind. That's called cat food for Thanksgiving in a trailer in Blythe. Let's get back to the numbers. Take a look at the screen here. I just took an employer contribution of $14.55 an hour, 1,700 hours, and I took that out of an example of the pension plan. So the annual contribution by the employer for every hour the employee works is going to be almost $25,000 a year. And after 30 years, you're going to have contributed $742,000, and the monthly contribution is about $2,000 a month. You get 60 credits after 30 years. That's assuming you don't get laid off, you have no breaks in service, you work continuously for 30 years, which is not the norm, but we're trying to paint the best case scenario for you to think about. I mentioned earlier that you're getting $58 a credit, and that means that your pension would be about $3,500, $3,480, $3,500. That $58 a credit really should be $88.86 if it was to keep up with inflation. So you can see where it's starting to lag. So your annual retirement would be $41,760 annually is what you're going to get for a pension. And then I did the math here with your life expectancy being 75 years old. Your wife's going to live to be 80. Your annual pension is $41.76. And so you retired at 65, you make it 10 years, you pulled out $417,000. Your wife limps along for another 5 at 50%. She pulls out another $200,000. And so this number here is your total take on your pension. You pulled out $626,000. Well, that's okay, except you put in 742, and so you're not going to get your own money back. Now, if your wife limps along another 5, you'll get a little closer, but you're basically not going to get any of that money back on a defined plan. Now, here's the fork in the road. If you're not good with money, if you buy a boat when you got extra change in your pocket or you got a drug habit, then this is an excellent plan for you. Now, keep in mind that people with 401ks, 41% of them cash them in. So then instead of getting your $3,500 a month or $3,000 a month, you're getting zero, minus Social Security, but you're getting zero. So you need to have an honest talk with yourself. Am I the type of person that would cash in that 401k and buy a boat, pay off some credit cards? Or am I a person that would save my money, part of that 60%, and ride it out to the end? And you can answer that question for yourself. But it's important that you understand how this works when you're 25 to 35 years old and not start to realize this when you're 55 to 65 years old. Let's take a look at what the companion 401k would look like. Now, keep in mind, I'm not a financial guru. I'm actually a surveyor. But these are some things that I've come to realize and some things to think about. You should probably talk to a financial planner as to your situation. Now, if you've been paying into this Local 3 or Local 12 pension for 30 years, you're hosed. You just ride it out to the end, eat your cat food in the trailer, and be content. If you're 25, think about it. Take a look at the screen here. This is investor.gov. I assume this is some government-run compound interest calculator. And let's see what we have here. So I'm going to start with an initial investment of $100. I'm going to contribute the $2,061 a month, and that came from our spreadsheet when I was doing the calcs earlier about how much the employer contributes. I put in 30 years of service, shown right here, and then I come over and interest rate, I'm going to just say the interest rate is 4.5%. If you look at most stocks and things, they're going to be more, but I'm going to say that I'm super conservative, and my interest rate is 4.5% over 30 years. So I come down and it's a compounded annually, and I hit calculate, and boom, 1,500,000. So it's $1,500,000 over 30 years, putting $2,000 in a month. And that's the companion to your defined benefit plan. And if you look here, it shows you how the value goes up at 4.5%. So now let's go back to my spreadsheet. There's my $1,500,000 that came from the 401k at 4.5% over 30 years. If you just Google and it says, how much can you earn in retirement? Well, that means that it would be $60,000 at 4%. That means I wouldn't touch any of the principal. I'd keep the $1,500,000 there, and I'd pull out $60,000 annually, and so that's monthly. That's $5,000 a month, as opposed to the $3,000. It's a $1,500. Now you have to remember that this $3,000 is never going to grow. There's no adjustment for inflation, and that's a maximum 60 credits shown here, $58 a credit. Even if it's 62, the math would be the same. Check it out. If I go up here and I go, let's go 62, and I hit enter. Okay, it goes to $37.20 at today's rates. So I get $37.20 a month as opposed to $5,000 a month. Plus, I still have the $1,500,000 there. Now, when you have $1,500,000, that's actually your money. You could take it out after 59 and a half, and there's different ages. Again, you need to see a financial person. However, you don't need to be a financial person to know that that $1,500,000 is yours. So when you die, your wife has $1,500,000. When she dies, there's $1,500,000 there for your kids, or to buy a boat, or whatever it is you want to do with that money. But that's actually your money. You're going to draw 60 grand a year at 4%, $5,000 a month, and still have the principal. Now, if you have some things going on, you can draw down some of that $1,500,000. Now, that's the math. So then you have to ask yourself, am I a 41%? I fall on hard times, I'm going to cash in that 401k, I'm going to pay taxes and penalties and have nothing when I retire? If so, that defined contribution plan is excellent. If you're somebody that says, I'm a little more responsible than that, I kick the drugs, well, then maybe you need to go through this and look at that contribution there. Of course, if you're signatory, what are you going to do there? You should be checking with your employer to see that they have a 401k, and in that 401k, if they have a matching, you're earning interest figuratively on the money that you're contributing over a 30-year window at 4% or 4.5%, whatever I showed there. You would have $1,500,000 a year money. Now, here's the good thing about the 401k is if you need a loan, you can take up to $50,000 out on a loan, and then you repay it, and you're repaying yourself interest. And you may need that money sometime for something to down payment on a house or something similar, or some kind of an emergency, so you have access to the money. That's not true with a defined pension plan. Again, it's not for everybody. You need to think about who you are and who you want to be and how this all fits together. Okay, last thing. Every year you're going to get a statement from the pension trust, and it's going to look just like what you see here on the screen. This is for Local 12, shown here. This is an important thing for you to look at. This is from 2020, so no, this is dated. I may have a more current one, but this is good, just good enough for you to see. When you get this in the mail, you better look at it. Okay, this form brings up your pension credit, $58 an hour, which is now $62. The important thing for you to look at, take a look at the screen, is right here. Pension funding status. The pensions fund is improved from critical to endangered status. So your pension that you're banking on, your $3 grand a month, it was in critical status and it's moved to endangered. And they usually have like a little red or green chart with that. So I don't mean to laugh, but it's gallows humor. So your endangered status. So what does it mean if your pension goes upside down and it takes a digger? Well, what it means is you get the PG, let's see, the Guaranteed Pension Fund, which has a maximum credit payout, I think, at $35 a credit. Now, that $35 a credit doesn't mean you're getting it. It's just that's the max. So you got your 58 bucks an hour, which should be 88 bucks an hour. But if this thing takes a digger, now you're going to be getting 35 bucks an hour. Plan accordingly. So in closing, think about it. Are you a defined benefit person, and that's excellent? Or are you a 401k disciplined person? Excellent. Okay, now there's a third option to think about. If you work for a public agency, you're going to get between 2% and 2.5% per year of service. And so that means that if you work the same 30 years we've used as a model here, that you're going to have 60% of your salary when you retire. And that is subject to increases, so it will keep up with inflation somewhat. And that's a good option, especially if you're at the 2.5%. There's also some agencies that factor in your age when your retirement, but that percent is consistent. And so think about that. So to wrap it up, you have three options when it comes to this pension contribution. Defined benefit, which you're going to get through Local 3 or Local 12. You're going to get the defined benefit through a public agency, which is going to index based on cost of living increases. And then the other contribution is if you work for a private company, then your employer should have a 401k set up and they should have some kind of matching contribution. And you could use this model that is negotiated with Local 3 or Local 12 as part of your model. And that $24,000, you have a cap on your 401k that's pretty close to that, particularly if you get over 50 years old. So pack away your clown shoes, put away your mini bike, start thinking about retirement when you're 25 and not 55. Thank you and have a nice day.